If you live in the west part of the United States, you really do need to look into this so that you can prepare now. Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is something that we need to start getting prepared for now because it will affect all of us. It will affect the west part of the US most, but it will affect all of us here in the United States. I'm going to go over this article with you, and I'm going to tell you afterwards what I would do if I lived in the vicinity of where this is occurring currently in the United States and where it is projected to get a lot worse. The US is on the verge of its first ever official shortage of this. The historic event could affect the west part of the US in the coming months. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is already affecting the west part of the United States. However, it's going to get worse. And it's not only the lack of water that they're experiencing right now, but also the lack of electricity. A lot of the western part of the United States runs on hydroelectric power. And the less water that there is sitting behind those dams that convert the flow of the water into electricity, the less electricity that's going to be available. And that's going to affect all sorts of things, from residential to farming to commercial. And what happens when all of those things are affected and less manufacturing can occur because there's a lack of water and or electricity? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that affects everything. It could affect jobs, and it will definitely affect the price of things. You know that I like to concentrate on price because right now, a lot of Americans, as like many people around the world, are pretty strapped for cash because of what's been going on in the last year or so. So let's go ahead and read on and see what this has to say. Of all things we rely on during our daily lives, water might be arguably the most underappreciated. And isn't that true, ladies and gentlemen? We turn on a tap and we expect water to come out of it. As easy as that, right? After all, we need it for everything, from showering to staying hydrated and healthy. But now the most precious resource is running in short supply in some areas, as officials in the US are on the verge of declaring the first ever water shortage in history of the federal government. And look at this picture, ladies and gentlemen. This is a man-made lake that supplies millions of water to people. And look at the watermarks. This is what I want you to take a look at. You see all of these peaks right here that are like white? This is up to where the water is normally at. And look at how low these lakes are. According to a 24-month projection released by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation this week, water levels in man-made lakes that supply drinking water to millions of people across the western United States are expected to drop significantly. The agency forecasts that less water will make its way down to the Colorado River, causing Lake Powell and Lake Mead to shrink below levels that will trigger the agency to declare a shortage. This makes me wonder, ladies and gentlemen, if that's why ticker symbol NQH2O, which is water that's traded on the NASDAQ via California, has gone up in price so much. I did a video on this a few days ago where it shows that the price of water being traded on the NASDAQ has gone from the low 500s to the low to mid 800s. Which is a 78% or so increase in the price. The model released by the Bureau of Reclamation forecasts that Lake Mead will drop to 1,075 feet in June of this year. This would trigger a shortage declaration based on an agreement between Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming, which are the states that rely on the Colorado River for water. So that is a lot of states that's going to affect, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever we think of water shortage, we usually think of California. But never mind, look at how many other states are affected by this. Even though effects won't be felt immediately, and that's the key word, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I'm bringing this video out. That is the key word. Even though effects won't be felt immediately, that's good news. You know why? Because it gives us time to prepare. Mostly people that are living in that part of the country. Officials will recheck conditions against projections in August to determine whether or not to declare a level 1 shortage condition. Water usage limitations and cuts would then go into effect for the first time ever in January. This is at a federal level, Because right now, as I understand in California, and any of you that are from California, please let us know in the comments, what kinds of water restrictions are you experiencing right now, and for how long have you been experiencing it? And this is another point that I wanted to make, ladies and gentlemen, about a water shortage, is that if these dams are too low, if the levels are too low, they're not going to be able to generate as much power as they usually do. As it says here, some states could see a dramatic reduction in their main water and electricity supply. So that's something that we have to look at as well, as far as being able to prepare for it ahead of time before these changes start to affect your main or your local area. Many local water authorities already have plans in place to help handle any water cuts, but the changes could weigh more heavily on states such as Arizona, which counts on the Colorado River as its main source of water and provides 36% of its supply. And it's not only the water supply that could be affected. The hydroelectric power generated by the Hoover Dam could also suffer as a result. As the elevation declines at the lake, then our ability to produce power declines as well because we have less water pushing on the turbines. It only makes sense, ladies and gentlemen. As a result, the shortfall in electrical output could have certain areas without the electricity they need. Rural economies in Arizona and Nevada live and die by the hydropower that is produced at the Hoover Dam. Wow. It is not your fault that the climate changes. That's just my opinion. You can take it as you like. Take a look at history from today all the way for as long back as you want to look. Has the climate changed throughout history? And have the conditions under which those climate changes have occurred been the same? Meaning that if you go back 1,000 years, climate was changing. However, the population of the planet was nowhere as close as to what it is now. Just do your research, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not asking you to believe what I believe. Do your research. Do a real thorough search in history and the climatic changes throughout history. Not just back the 100 years that they like to go back. There's a reason why they like to only go back about 100 years or so when they show you a chart. Go back 1,000 years. Go back 5,000 years. They do have data that they've acquired through ice core samples of what the climate was like 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 years ago. And you will see for yourselves that the data hopefully will convince you that the climate has always been changing. It's not a 120-year phenomenon. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm going to try to give you some ideas on what I would do if I knew that there was a forthcoming water shortage that was going to affect the way in which I or my family consume water. Now, some of these things may work for some of you. Some of them may not work for some of you. However, these ideas that I would give you is what I would look into doing if I was in that situation, and then maybe you can tweak them, and it will also give you ideas that you can come up with on how to better prepare for this water shortage that is looming around the corner. Now, of course, the first thing is that we need to be prepared, period. If you're not really prepped, you really need to start preparing. Something like this is going to affect the consumption of residential, commercial, ranching, and farming. And again, it's going to affect the consumption of electricity. Why? Because there's going to be less. It's going to affect your residential water usage. Why? Because you're probably going to be restricted as to how much water you can use if you're not already being restricted. A lot, if not most, manufacturing or commercial plants that produce anything, they need water, either to cool systems down, either to flush things down. Like, for example, I used to work in a yogurt making plant. I used to work for Yoplait Yogurt decades ago. You would not believe how much water is consumed just in one small yogurt plant. It's incredible. I also used to work for the dairy industry. They were called Dean's Foods. I think they're out of business now, not 100% sure. But you would not imagine how much water is consumed in the processing of dairy products. Same thing with ranching and farming. Water is everything. Without water, there will be no us. Prepare for everything. That way you can make sure that once you have to concentrate on a certain part of your preps, that you don't have to worry about the other stuff. Meaning, let's say you're already prepped up with food. Great. And then you have a water shortage. Well, now, instead of having to worry about food and water, all you have to worry about is water. So go ahead and prep your food. Of course, store away as much water as you can. And I think that I have a great solution for you to be able to store a lot of water if you have the room and if you're hooked up to a water utility, a public water utility. Many of you probably have seen the 2,500 gallon water tank that I have that I'm going to go ahead and hook up in line with my water system that I already have under my house. If I lived in a home like within a city, right, and I had a 2-car garage, I would purchase one of those tanks and put it on one side of my garages. One of those tanks is about 8 feet in diameter, so it's pretty big, and it's about 8 feet tall. So I would go ahead and put one of those tanks inside of my garage. I would then hook up my city water to that tank so that it can feed that tank. And then I will go ahead and hook up another line coming out to my house. Now, in order to do this, you would need to go ahead and purchase a second pump to hook up to your house line, because the water coming into your tank is already pressurized. However, you would need a pump to hook up to your house line. What will that do? That will give you time to slowly fill that tank up to 2,500 gallons from the city line, right? From your city utility. And then from that tank, you can draw water into your house. Whenever that tank gets down like 500 gallons, all you have to do is turn on your city line and fill it back up until it's full. What this is going to do is it's going to give you an additional 2,500 gallons of water storage. Now, I know that many people cannot do this. However, if you do have the space, that's 2,500 gallons. In the worst of situations, that's 2,500 days worth of water if it's just one person. Of course, you take the 1 gallon a day per person, you divide it into 2,500 gallons, and that's the number of days that your family can go in the direst of situations with still being able to have water to survive. Of course, we all want to live on more than just 1 gallon of water a day. So you take however many gallons of water a day you need in order to maintain your standard of living. You divide that into 2,500, and that's how much extra water you have stored in that tank inside of your garage. If you have room outside of your house because you own your own land and you're not restricted by codes and all these things, that happens usually when you live within a city limit, then you can put that tank outside your house. And if everything's all right and you really don't need to draw from it because nothing bad is happening, you can always use that water to water your garden, wash your cars, or whatever, right? You can use it for whatever you want, but you'll know that you still have that 2,500 gallons of water there in order to back you up in case the system goes down or the restrictions become so draconian that you really find it very difficult to live. Make sure that you have a good quality gravity-fed water system. If you haven't seen the video where I made a homemade Berkey water system using 5-gallon buckets and the internal parts of a Berkey, go ahead and check that out. It's a big money saver. You can produce water with a dehumidifier. Of course, I would only do this during the direst of situations, and then also backing that up, I would make sure that before I consume that water that I took all the steps necessary in order to make that water 100% potable. Make sure that you have some kind of a backup system to produce power for you. Because if the power goes out and you are without water, you're going to need power, number one. But if you have one dedicated just to your dehumidifier, you will be able to produce a couple of gallons a day, depending what kind of dehumidifier you buy and what capacity it will produce in a day. So ladies and gentlemen, those are some of the things that I would do if I knew that it was a possibility that I was going to have some really heavy water restrictions. As far as the tank goes, this summer I am going to work on putting that tank in line with my main system. I'm going to work on winterizing it. That way you can see how it's winterized, meaning that it will be able to sit outside at negative 40 degrees without the water inside of it freezing. Hopefully I'll be able to get to that this summer. That's going to be on my priority list, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, this is very important. Tomorrow, Sunday, during our live stream at 12 noon Alaska time, 4 p.m. Eastern time, it's going to be a pretty awesome live stream, so please don't miss it. Be there. There are going to be some giveaways involved, and it's going to be a lot of fun because I have a great story to tell you about something that happened to me here this last Friday. We'll leave it at that. Hope to see you all there. Hope you're having a great weekend so far. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world will be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is Alaska Prepper. I am out.